Please watch the video until the end. Every detail matters, and the last seconds change everything. Chapter 1. People move to small towns to forget. I moved to one because I needed answers. My name is Daniel Hayes. I had been the kind of man who asked questions until they burned the tongues of those who answered. When my sister, Claire, died on a rainless October night, the official line was suicide, a tidy, closed file. But the hospital watchman swore he'd heard a bell at midnight, though there had been no clock in the ward. A neighbor said he'd seen a shadow at the window shaped like a wing. The coroner's notes mentioned an impression on her palm someone had called a small, precise bruise, like a finger trace. That phrase lodged in my head like a splinter. People in Ashford, if I could call it that, didn't like the word Azrael. But they knew the myth. An old name for an old thing, an agent between breaths. They said not to speak it aloud because the word worked like a key. So they spoke it softly, or not at all. I told myself I wasn't looking for angels or demons. I told myself I was only following traces. That was easier than admitting I wanted someone to be to blame. The Bellmaker's house sat on the far edge of town, an architecture of jealousy. Narrow windows, a roof like a bared set of teeth, and a bell tower that had never been rung in living memory. They said the last bell had shattered with a scream. The house had been empty until a month before Claire's death. A man called the Bellmaker came, they said. Someone who made things precise. A clockmaker, some muttered. A maker of small things that fit too well into the human skin. Chapter 2. I approached the Bellmaker's gate at dusk. The town seemed to breathe slower nearby, as if timing had been altered by a hand unseen. The bell tower's silhouette gnawed at the sky. I tasted metal and old paper as I reached for the latch. It moved without protest. Inside was the smell of oil and something colder, like the air from an open grave. Small clocks lined the walls, each stopped at a different hour. Shelves held tiny instruments, filigreed keys, brass hooks, things you would expect in a man who could repair time. Some shelves, though, held packed boxes of teeth and little bones, neatly labeled. Under one label my hands trembled, Claire Hayes. I do not know why I did not throw the boxes to the floor. Perhaps dead things in boxes are easier to look at than the living holes they point to. A note on the workbench. For precise departures. The handwriting was undecided, as if two hands had taken turns. A bell sat on a velvet cushion, its bronze surface untouched by dust. The Bellmaker's tools were arranged on a blood-stained cloth that had been cleaned recently. In the bell's hollow I heard something when I put my ear close. The faint echo of a voice, a syllable that felt like a countdown. When night came, the clocks began to whisper. They didn't tick, they counted names. At first I thought it was the wind, but it was the clocks. Each one ran at its own crooked rhythm, and hissed a syllable the way a throat clears across a room. I held a match to a clock face, and saw my reflection in the glass, older, hollower. Someone who had waited too long for justice, until justice itself had grown impatient, and turned its back. Chapter 3. It was then that I met him. If a man who slides like smoke and smells of copper and snow can be called a man. He introduced himself with a nod, and a bell that wasn't his. A tiny chime of something indifferent. He wore no name tag. He wore a suit that did not reflect light, and had eyes like closed doors. Most people think of me as an ending, he said. His voice sounded like the underside of a clock. I am more convenient than that. I want to know why Claire. I started. You want truth, he corrected. But truth here is a service. It keeps time tidy. It requires a balance. He offered me a deal without stretching his fingers. In the Bellmaker's ledger, a book thick as a heart, names were inked beside times. If you give me a memory, he said, I will give you 1 hour with the one you lost. The memory would be precise. A single image, a single sound, the smallest moment that defined you. He would take it and make it his own. In return, for a price of a portion of your time, I could see Claire again for 60 minutes. Grief is a bribable thing. I thought of 1,000 small recollections I would gladly surrender, but the Bellmaker's smile creased across something beyond mercy. He mentioned clauses in quiet voices. No warning can alter the bolt. Exchanges are final. Once traded, you will not be able to remember the thing itself, only that it was taken. I bargained, and the terms were written with a quill of bone. I surrendered a memory of my first morning with Claire, her hair like straw, her laugh catching on the word son. When the Bellmaker took it, my chest felt hollowed like timber. The memory dissolved and left a diagrammatic ache. In its place, the ledger offered an hour. Midnight, the third night after my bargain. Chapter 4. Midnight came on a night that smelled of rain that never fell. The Bellmaker led me to the tower's top. From the parapet, the town looked like an arrangement of pins, asleep. There was a rope and a bell and a ledger that tracked breaths. "Ring it," he said. "One ring, 1 hour. But you will not be the same when the hour ends." The bell's rope was warm under my palms. I hesitated because bargains have a way of teaching you their cruelty the instant you bind yourself to them. Then I pulled. The sound was not a sound, but a motion. The hour unfolded like a film of ice melting inside my skull. Claire was there, sitting on the tower stool as if summoned by a theater stage. She looked real enough to wish for mercy, but there was a slower calibration to her. She spoke in a voice wrapped in distant hours. Her eyes held the bell's bronze. "Our work is tidy here," she said. "We collect what must be taken." "Why?" I asked, though I already knew the kinds of answers the world offers when it cares more for pattern than people. Claire's smile was a small fracture. "Because someone rings us," she said, and motioned to the ledger. "Someone counts us neat." Time that wasn't mine poured through me. She walked through memories I had not given, the ones she was clawing at in the dark. She showed me a man who came to her door with precise questions about regret. She showed me the Bellmaker's hands, soft as moss but good with instruments. She showed me sealing, a thing like an incision made in the seam of a life. When the hour ended, the bell's last toll wasn't for Claire. It tolled for me. I felt hours slip from my bones like sand. I knew then the bargain had not only bought a glimpse, it had allowed the ledger to correct the balance my time owed. I stumbled from the tower as the Bellmaker closed the ledger and bowed like a librarian satisfied. Chapter 5. Once favors are called, they demand repayment. Days bled into one another with clockwork cruelty. The town's windows frosted inward with an hourglass condensation. People I'd known for years looked at me with the pause of those deciding whether the man they see is the man he seems. I woke to find a small bell on my pillow and a note. "Balance due. One memory of coming alive." It is easier to give away childhood and favorite songs. It is not so easy to negotiate a debt that requires the unmaking of what makes you yourself. The Bellmaker made it clear. You can run, but you run in circles of time you borrowed. Name one memory to return, not the fact of a thing, but what you felt in it, and it will be taken. I tried to hold on. I tried to preserve the half-sentences of Claire's last laugh, to stitch them into a quilt against his tally. Each attempt frayed another seam. People in town began to forget small things, where they'd placed photographs, how to start their cars, a child's name disappearing from a conversation. It was subtle, then systemic. The ledger fed on the similitudes. The Bellmaker learned to ring others' bells without moving. I found him one morning behind my mother's dryer, holding a watch to the lint and smiling like a man satisfied when his work is unnoticed. When I confronted him, he opened his palms and offered me an engine of logic. "You wanted a reason," he said. "You wanted a hand to hold. We provide tidy conclusions." He did not call himself Azrael. He did not need to. The ironwork of his promises showed the shape. Chapter 6. In the end, I had to choose how much of myself to pay. They offered me an exchange I had not anticipated, a chance to break the ledger. If I would give up the one memory that made me human beyond repair, it was the memory of my father teaching me to wind a watch on his knee, the smell of his aftershave, the way his fingers let go when time was set right. Without that memory, I could become a pattern, a mechanism to slip through the ledger's teeth and stop its counting. I could become the Bellmaker's undoing, but I would also become unmoored. I could have refused. I could have kept my scraps of self and lived to watch the town unthread around me. I thought then of Claire's fingers, of the bruise on her palm, of the way the neighbor had seen something winged. I thought of the ledger's neatness against her loose hair. I thought of all the little things people give to keep their days tidy. The Bellmaker's ledger loved small payments. It never required an ocean, only drops. So I handed the memory across a table smoothed by years of bargains. The pain when it left was like unthreading a heavy sweater. Nothing sudden, but a slow unraveling that reveals the whole garment's construction. The Bellmaker closed the ledger with a sound like a jaw. The tower's bell rang once and did not stop. Hours fell like brittle leaves. The clocks went silent because they had surrendered their mouths. The ledger, opened like a throat, spat out pages. They laid on the floor like skin. In that carved quiet, the Bellmaker laughed once, not unkindly, and then something in him flickered like a light put under a thimble. When the dust settled, I could not remember the watch on my father's knee. I could not say the word wind without the sound emptying where memory used to live. But I could move, and more. I could listen to parts of the ledger and see where the entries joined. I found the Bellmaker's method in rhythms and knots. I felt less like a man and more like a hinge. I used that hinge. I took the ledger and read it like one dismantles a clock. Where it demanded a memory, I offered a question. Where it required a face, I offered silence. The ledger resisted. There was no mercy in paper, but paper confesses when cut. The Bellmaker tried to stop me. His hands were the last words the town could speak. He tried to pry the ledger back into order. We fought with time as our weapon and our wound. I remember the moment the ledger tore. No heroism, only the flat business of pages falling. When the last sheet came free, the house exhaled. Clocks collapsed into moth-worn piles. The bells, those instruments of tallying, dropped silent into the dust. For a while, the town breathed again, as if someone had opened a window in a room that had been closed too long. If you want to know what happened to Claire after that, or whether the ledger truly crumbled, you must subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give this video a like, leave a comment below, and share it with someone who loves tales that keep their eyes open after midnight.